Dr. Zoe's here with a look at the health headlines in the news. Good morning,
Good
dear.
morning.
Another day, another weight loss jab headline.
I know. We can't get away from it, can we?
No. Tell us what's going on.
So I've had a couple of friends contact me already this morning, a bit worried about this. So it's the numbers. We know that pancreatitis, inflammation of the pancreas, is a potential side effect from weight loss jabs.
OK.
So it's in the news today because the MHRA are investigating it because they've sort of given the numbers of people who've taken weight loss jabs and ended up with pancreatitis. Doesn't necessarily mean the weight loss jab caused it, but they ended up with pancreatitis. So it's roughly about 550. And 10 people have then subsequently died from their pancreatitis. So that sounds worrying. The two reasons why people shouldn't freak out about it. Firstly is what I mentioned. They're looking into it, but it doesn't mean that the weight loss jabs has caused the pancreatitis.
Yep.
A couple of reasons why it might increase the risk. We know that if you lose weight quickly, whether it's from weight loss jabs or otherwise, it increases the risk of gallstones, and gallstones can cause pancreatitis. But also the weight loss jabs, this receptor, GLP-1 receptor that they stimulate, they can increase the receptors in the pancreas itself. So there is some logic as to why it might. But the second reason why people shouldn't be too concerned is that if you look at the general population who aren't taking weight loss jabs, it's a similar number of people that go on to get pancreatitis and a similar number of people who subsequently die. So they're looking into it, but there isn't anything to be hugely worried about.
Yes.
But it reminds us that, that risk versus benefit equation will be different for everybody. So people who have very complicated obesity are much more likely to have a beneficial sway in that scale than people who are taking it for aesthetic reasons.
But they're not reducing access to it?
No, not at all. There's actually no evidence that it's dangerous. It causes it.
Let's talk egg freezing.
Yes.
Something that you yourself have done?
Yeah. So I froze my eggs when I was 38. I was single at the time and always knew I wanted to be a mum. Fortunately for me, I went on to meet my partner the following year, and then we had our little boy a couple of years after that, and we conceived naturally. So I've never needed to use my eggs, but, they remain there, and for me now I'm 45. So if I did want to consider having another child, then I would choose to use those eggs rather than use my eggs that I have in my body now. So this is about how, whilst egg freezing has become much more popular, especially over the past decade, the numbers of women that are actually going back and using those eggs is quite low. And there are lots of reasons why. For example, like me, in the end, I managed to meet somebody and conceive naturally. For some people, they're just not ready yet. It's only been, if they only froze them in the last few years, it might be another 5 years or 6 years before they go on to use them. Some people choose not to parent. Some people might not be able to afford the cost of the IVF that follows the egg freezing. Some people freeze their eggs for health issues and, subsequently, for whatever reason, might not want to go on and have a baby. So I think, we see this huge surge in people freezing their eggs. It makes sense that people going back to use their eggs, that surge is probably coming, but it's a bit further in the future. So I think that it just makes sense. I think we will see more people coming back to use their eggs.
Is there any concern with the numbers of eggs being frozen and then not being used?
I don't think so. I don't think there's any reason why it's a concern. It's similar to embryos being frozen when couples do IVF. You pay an annual fee to keep them frozen, and if you decide that you don't want to use them, then you have a choice. You can donate them, or you can choose for them to be destroyed at some point in the future. And I think if we do end up in a situation where there are eggs frozen and they're in a chamber and they're locked away, they're not draining the planet in any way. They're not using a huge amount of resources or space. And you do a lot of paperwork when you freeze your eggs or when you freeze embryos to determine, in the circumstance of whatever might happen to you or your partner, what happens to them. So.
OK, let's move on to smear tests. At-home smear tests could save lots of lives. This is a new scheme that's being rolled out. Is it this week it's coming out?
So it's coming out in January next year.
OK.
So cervical screening, as we know, saves many, many lives, saves approximately 5,000 lives in this country each year. And we're not looking for cancer when we do a screening, we're looking for cell changes that could turn into cancer. And actually nowadays it's a HBV. We're looking for the virus that could cause the cell changes that could cause the cancer. So the best way to prevent yourself from getting cervical cancer is to attend your screening when you're invited. And for most of us, actually, that won't change because the gold standard test is to have it done by a clinician. But there are lots of people who actually don't attend their screening. So there are roughly 5 million people who are not up to date with their cervical screening. And a smaller proportion of people actually have never attended or very rarely attended. Now, there are additional barriers for some people. People from certain ethnic groups, for example, might not go forward. Very young women or people with a cervix, people from the LGBT plus community, and people who have certain disabilities. It can be very challenging. So from January next year, this group of people who have never attended or rarely attended will be sent out a swab that they can do at home. And it's very easy. It's like a cotton bud, but a long one. Insert it into the vagina, and you swirl it around a few times, and you put it in a little pod, and that's it. It's really straightforward. So it's not the gold standard. It's not quite as good as having it done by a doctor or a nurse, but it's close to, and it gives access to those people. The other news that you might be referring to, Kat, is that from next month, instead of being screened every 3 years, if your previous HPV screening was negative, it will now be 5 years. So they've found that moving it from 3 years to 5 years doesn't change your risk of getting cervical cancer. And the other bit of news that I always like to share is that the NHS is aiming for cervical cancer to be eradicated by 2040. So with the HPV vaccine, as well as the screening programme. So good news. We're getting
great target to aim for, isn't it? Right then, you've got your basket in front of you.
Yes.
Because we can pick up a Brazilian butt lift when you go down to the supermarket.
Yeah, BBL in a basket. Who'd have ever thought it?
Dr.
I mean,
Zeri.
this is like the perfect basket. It's super healthy. So this glute diet, to give you the perfect buns, requires you to consume sufficient amounts of good quality protein. So what have we got in here? We've got some chicken, we've got some fish. Some tofu. Healthy fats, so we've got some avocado in there, maybe some nuts and seeds. Complex carbohydrates, that's your brown rice, sweet potatoes, but also adding a source of collagen. So we've got some bone broth in there.
Oh, yeah.
And vitamin C, because that also helps. If you're going to have a nice plump bum, you want to have nice elastic skin to go on the plump bum as well. In addition to this, which is actually a very healthy diet.
It is, right? It's
that
great.
most people looking to build muscle would look at this. Bodybuilders would eat this sort of thing. But also you need a workout. So it's a glute-focused workout. So Ben, I thought this gives us all the opportunity to see you demonstrate a perfect squat for us.
Didn't even do a squat. So explain a little bit about why a squat's important.
So squats activate the glute muscles. So in order to get this, you're trying to do it naturally by improving the density and the size of the gluteus muscles, which are the buttock muscles.
The gluteus maximus.
Yes. Now, you know, I mean, we're loving this, aren't we, guys? Everyone in the studio.
Jamie's got the view. Come on, Jamie, get your glutes going.
Deeper.
What would
Go on, Jamie, if you
activate those
What would Sawyer say?
So at absolute beginners, it recommends doing 2 to 3 sets of 15 squats every other day. Increase that to 3 sets of 20, and then once you feel confident, there's a glute challenge, which is 100 squats a day for 30 days. Right up your street.
100 squats a day for 30 days.
Now, of course, genetics will determine the size of the glutes to some extent that you can achieve and the shape that you can achieve. But, you know, anything that promotes a really healthy diet and getting people moving.
And not going under the knife and doing it naturally. I totally agree, so brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for visiting our This Morning YouTube channel. We upload new content every day, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out, and we'll see you in the morning.